Hey everybody, I'm Curtis Wilkerson, and thank you for joining me today on another episode of the Physician's Mind podcast. This show is designed to engage the curious mind and help optimize your journey on the pursuit of lifelong learning and self-improvement in medicine and beyond. Today I was honored to speak with Dr. Alex Sher. Dr. Sher is a first-year psychiatry resident at Baycare, and he's also a columnist for The DO, a national publication designed for osteopathic physicians by osteopathic physicians. It features news and other features about osteopathic medicine, and it's a national publication of the American Osteopathic Association. Dr. Sher is from South Florida, and he has a very interesting pathway to medicine, to say the least. He was a home health aide, he was a registered nurse, and he was a family nurse practitioner. Overall, he was in the nursing field for about 10 years before he decided he was going to go to medical school. So stay tuned and hear our interesting discussion about how Dr. Sher ended up at medical school and some tips and advice that he's got for anybody else in the medical field. If you enjoyed this episode, please share on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Without further ado, here's the episode. Hope you enjoy. So, Dr. Sher, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me, Curtis. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's cooling down now in Florida. We're getting a little cold front, so I'm happy.
Absolutely. You know what? And I feel you on that cold weather here because I'm calling you from Michigan. And being an Arizona native, I'm not sure how I'm going to handle this first winter out here.
Oh,
But awesome. So, my first question that I always like to ask my guests is to just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where are you from, some of your hobbies.
that's a loaded question for me. So I'm a Florida guy, born and raised in Fort Lauderdale. Um, was a nurse for several years, went on to become a nurse practitioner for some more years, married, had three kids, went off to med school, came back with a fourth one. Hobbies wise, bike riding with the kids, swimming, martial arts. I did a lot growing up, and that's kind of my interesting journey right there.
Awesome. All right. So, you got four kids now, huh?
Yeah, four.
Incredible. Good for you. Congratulations on all of that. Sounds like you've got a pretty interesting life outside of medicine, to say the least. So, you are a first year psychiatry resident at Baycare, and you're also a columnist for the DO, a national publication by osteopathic physicians for osteopathic physicians. Before we kind of get involved in talking about your med school journey and some of your duties as a psych resident, could you share a little bit about your work as a columnist?
Yeah, so basically the DO reached out. I want to say it was in my first year of medical school, maybe in the fall time. They were revamping the magazine. They were getting a new editor. They said, you know what? We want to kind of have this made by DOs and osteopathic medical students for the same group, for DOs and osteopathic medical students. So we formed the editorial advisory board. I threw in an application. They chose me. There was maybe like 20 of us in the beginning. We had Dr. Manapod was the DO. She's a psychiatrist, by the way. She led as the editor, and we just kind of brainstormed this whole thing, developed columns, and one of them was DO to know, kind of what you're doing, interviewing medical students and DOs that are just doing great things in the community, interesting stories, and just sharing it. So I've been with the DO now almost 4 years, probably a little over that, and it's been a great journey.
Very cool. To anybody who's listening right now, I would highly recommend checking out the DO. It's all online, tons of cool articles, tons of cool info. So, Dr. Scher, you started out as a home health aide, you were an RN, you were a family nurse practitioner, and then you ended up in medical school. So, how does that work? Can you tell us the process that you went through before starting med school?
Yeah, I didn't know I wanted to be a doctor, obviously. I took the scenic route, as I like to say. I was actually, I graduated high school with an associate degree in business. I was dual enrolled in high school. So I was kind of lost, right? I was like 17 at the time, and my uncle was a CPA. I just followed him. I got a bachelor's in accounting. I was in my early 20s, kind of lost, didn't know what to do. Grandmother got sick, right? And my dad and mom were like, just go get your home health aide, go help out grandma, dressing changes, give her meds. I was like, all right, I'll do it. She used to take care of me when I was a kid. So I was like, I'll go over there after work, take care of grandma a little bit. Liked it. grandma was like, "You're pretty good at this." I would talk with, it's more than just patient care, right? There's a lot of things that go with it, empathy and just being there for somebody. So I liked it. I liked it more than my job in accounting, and I was doing insurance at the time, early 20s, kind of lost in the world. Grandma was like, "You should look into maybe nursing or something." And I was like, "You know what? I think that's a good idea." So I enrolled in nursing school. My grandmother passed right before I graduated, but she kind of was the catalyst. I became a nurse for a few years, loved it. And while I was working in nursing, I got a new job. I did like med surge for a year or so. Then I went to the trauma floor in Delray, and I saw these nurses with white coats on running around. I was like, "What is this?" They're like, "Oh, we're nurse practitioners." I said, "That looks cool." I was like, how do I do something like this?" They're like, "Well, you got to go back to school. You can get your master's in nursing." So I was like, "All right." I found like a part-time program at University of Central Florida. So I would go to class. I would do clinicals in class like 3 days a week, and I would work the other 3 nights. I was a night nurse. So I was like, all right, I worked full time, went to school part time, and after like 2.5 or so years, I get my MP degree and I become a family nurse practitioner. Now I'm wearing this white coat. They doubled my salary. Life's good, right? At this time, I think I was in my late 20s. So now I'm working. I took a primary care job. Of course, I'm married now. I pop out a few, my wife pops out a few kids, right? And I work urgent care. So after like 5 years of this, right? I'm sitting there working the urgent care. I'm in like early 30s now. And I'm working around a bunch of DOs, and they're all interesting characters. DOs are always very interesting characters. I feel more than I don't want to knock the MDs, but DOs, there's a lot of I guess second career. DOs like that holistic view for entrance, I would say. So I remember Dr. Elser, he was a engineer before he went to med school. We had a colonel from the army. He was actually a chiropractor. He was enlisted. Then he went back to become a chiropractor. Went back and he was like a full bird, a Dr. Wilson. And I was talking to them and they're like, you ever thought about medical school? And I was like, yeah, I've been doing nursing now almost 10 years now. I like being an MP. And they're like, we went back in our early mid 30s and they planted that seed, took some night classes for like 2 years, and then I applied to DL MD school, got some interviews, and got here I am 4 years later. Now I'm a first year resident. So it's been so that's the story in kind of a nutshell.
That's super funny. I mean, and that's just super cool because it goes to show how you really just never know where life is going to take you.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned how the DOs are always like some unique characters. And, you knew one that was a colonel, you knew one that was, you said, or the colonel was also the chiropractor,
He's
right?
a
And then the
car,
other one was
yeah.
the engineer, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That brings to mind there's a research sort of, he's a researcher at my school here, and he's a DL PhD. And it's like he was in the Army for 6 years. He was actually an engineer first at NASA for like another 10 years. And then he went to medical school when he was like 51. So now, it's like
Yeah.
these guys oftentimes have very interesting stories. And now that I think about it, I should invite him on the show too. But that's awesome. So, all right, fast forward through all of that sort of navigation towards where you were as you applied to medical school. You applied, you got in, and you got in Tennessee, right? Was it
Yeah. Lincoln Memorial over there in Harrogate. We have a few campuses now, but it's East Tennessee, beautiful part of
okay?
Tennessee. Hmm.
So, something I always like to discuss on this show here is challenges and overcoming those challenges. So, when you started medical school, how old were you?
34.
34, and you had two kids or three
Three
kids?
kids, three at the time. Yeah.
34 years old, married, you got three kids. So obviously that in and of itself is challenging. You throw in the med school curriculum and the whole career change had to just be chaotic for quite a while. So, when you started med school and you were just getting into the groove of things, what were some of the most difficult challenges you faced and how did you overcome those challenges?
So med school was, the hardest thing I've ever done academically. And, as you could tell, I had a business degree, nursing, a master's in nursing. I worked full time as a nurse, went back to my master's. But med school is it's another beast. It's literally, they tell you this. Everyone's heard this, like drinking from a fire hose, and it is true. It's every 2 weeks you have a massive exam that's 3, 4 hours long. and just dedication. I'm a smart guy. I'm not the world's smartest. I'm not the world's dumbest, but just being focused in and zoned in. And you have the family, just making time, right? I knew I'm going to go to class and I'm going to dedicate certain amount of hours a day to studying, time management, right? Seeing my kids for a few hours a day as well. So that was the toughest part, just schedule, sticking to it, because there's no room to slip up for take a few days off from med school.
Nope.
You'll dig yourself a hole you don't want to be in.
So time management is
Time
definitely crucial.
management, staying
Okay.
on top of everything for sure.
Absolutely. And of course, just the sheer amount of content that you're facing in medical school is just overwhelming at times. And you just have to
Correct.
you have to just be a tank going in. You have to know what you're expecting.
Correct. And if you stay on schedule and because you got in med school, right? We both you got in, I got in. So we're smart enough to be here. Now, are you dedicated enough to be here? That's the only difference. Do you have the I don't know, stubbornness to stick in and take these beatings? I like to call them because like I said, every 2 weeks there's an exam coming and it doesn't stop for anything. I don't care if your kid has a fever and you've been up all night, you know, kids got COVID during medical school, wife got COVID. I had quarantined house, like it's just being stubborn and dedicated because but you're here, you're smart enough to be here. So that was the
Right.
toughest part.
I like that analogy, right? Because I've heard many times before, like you're here, you deserve to be here, you're smart enough to be here, you got in. But it's interesting to note, right? It's like, okay, we know you're smart enough, but now do you have the grit? I always like to compare it to like a fight or a match. It's like you've got to train, you've got to hit that brain gym, and you've got to train because you've got a fight coming up, and the fights
Yep.
don't stop. And you just got to stay sharp. You got to keep sharpening that blade. So very cool, and that's just the truth. So now, when did you decide you were interested in psychiatry?
So I went to medical school and I got the National Health Service Corps scholarship, right? I'm a National Health Service scholar, meaning that they cover the 4 years. You have to go, but you have to go in a certain specialty, right? It's like family med, internal med, OB-GYN, psych, peds. So going in, even before the scholarship, I knew I kind of was focusing on either maybe like family med, because I was a family nurse practitioner. I liked they're so versatile, right? I like did urgent care, I could do clinic, you could do ERs. So I like that part of family med. Part of me thought maybe ER. So I get the scholarship. I'm like, all right, I'll probably do family med. And I'm reading through and I'm like, oh, I could even do OB-GYN if I wanted to or psych. And then I would say second year in of medical school, we started doing our behavioral health classes at my school, anyways. And I'm like, this is interesting. I like this. The continuity of care, which I liked about family med. And it was just so needed. I used to volunteer, so I was a lot with the underserved, and I'm like, wow, this is similar to family med, but it's kind of more specialized, very interesting, and I kind of and it satisfied my scholarship. It like hit all the points I wanted to do, and I was like, you know what? I told my wife I really like it. She was like, okay. Clinicals third year came around. I was like, let me do a clinical rotation. And I went with Dr. Lasada over here in Ocala, Florida. Loved it. She was a neuropsych. And then I did a few sub I's and I was like, this is for me. And it's kind of built like everything. I organically grow, right? I get a little seed and I just water it and grow it. And I'm like, you know what? This works out. That's just how life works out for me.
Pretty cool. All right. So, you had the scholarship coming in, you had a few options, and, you liked family practice, you liked sort of the continuity of care, you liked working with the
Yeah.
patients like that. You were an FNP before, but you found psych and you found it was a little more unique. You maybe had a little more of a nuanced impact on each of your patients, and it was super interesting. That's very cool.
And psych is everywhere. Like when I was a family nurse practitioner, I worked at a federally qualified health center, right? A lot of uninsured, homeless, indigent, and you're dealing with psych. I don't care what you do, family med, internal med, cardiology, psych's there. And I always and I was treating a lot of psychiatric patients, bipolar, depression at a lower level, and I always enjoyed that as well. So people who think, oh, I don't like psych, you can't run from it either. So embrace it and take care of these patients and get them to where they need to be.
Yeah, and it's like you can't avoid it because as those DOs believe, it's the mind, body, spirit integrated into one whole, right?
Here, you're ready. You're ready for school, man.
Ready to rock.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
So, okay, very interesting. So you are now in the first year and it's been about 4 months now since you began residency?
July 1st. Yeah, so July, August, September, October. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're right there. Something like this. I'm on my they're 4 week rotations, so I'm just now finishing my fourth one. So yeah, yeah, about 4 months in, four blocks in.
Okay, very cool. So now I want to ask you, in regards to medical schooling, before we get into sort of the residency questions, what advice would you have for a student who's about to start medical school and, they may be a traditional or a non-traditional applicant? What advice would you have for a student that wants to succeed? They want to do well, they want to be competitive. What are some tips? We
Oh, to
talked
get
about,
into medical school?
well, let's assume they're in medical school.
Okay.
Tips to thrive in medical school. We discussed grit, do you have any other
Yeah.
tips?
Okay. In this is odd to say, but enjoy it. Enjoy it. Go in there thinking these are 4 years. They're gonna be tough, but enjoy it. Make friends, be sociable because these people I talk to people from first year still, weekly. Be sociable, enjoy it, join clubs, explore new things, right? We had like a psych sign club. I joined that. You can talk to other like-minded people who are interested in psychiatry or IM clubs and network with people because medicine's small. The DO world, and what I love about being a DO is we're even smaller because we're about 25% of the physicians. So Dr. Storch, he's publishing an article. It's like we have a secret handshake. Like another DO sees another DO, and we're instantly vibing and connecting with each other. So make those connections. Enjoy your time there and explore. Don't be fixed. Don't go into medical school saying, I only want to do neurosurgery and I'm only gonna no, join other clubs, join a general surgery club, join an OB-GYN club. That's what I explore. There you go.
Yeah, man. Awesome. See, that's a fresh perspective. Go in and just enjoy it, right? Because you hear so much about how hard it is and blah, 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 blah,
Nightmare,
blah.
yeah.
Like, you know what? Face the challenge openly, right? And just
Mhm.
have fun, meet people. I mean, if I started med school and I met a classmate that was that had that attitude, I can't help but feel like that guy would just be the man or the woman, whoever it may be, right? Like that person would be on top. If they were there in the midst of the chaos, just like, come on, team, we've got this.
And you're there for each other. Like we would share notes with each other, Anki cards. Someone would like I had a buddy Seth, Iowa guy, man. I've never met somebody from Iowa, all right? I'm from the Fort Lauderdale area. Good people you meet from all over the world because you're outside of your region, right? I'm in Tennessee now. I'm a South Florida guy. So you meet people from different regions of the world. He's like, yeah, he'd make Anki cards for different subjects and he'd share it with us. And that's what life about. We're all here for each other because there is a social dynamic, right? Your support system, and your parents are thousands, hundreds or thousands of miles away. Some people's parents are in other countries, so it's your support group. People forget that you're not an island, and that'll get you far too. A good
Yep,
social network.
definitely. Got to make friends, got to be cool.
Yeah.
So,
Go to the parties after the test. You don't need to drink alcohol, but go there, hang out, go hit the hummus or the cheese dip. Say hi to your local classmates. Go do. I'm not condoning now keggers and all nighters and stuff like this, but
live
make it
life.
interact. Meet
Yes.
your future spouse. Even I we had several people from my class that got married. They met in med school.
Yeah. It really is a beautiful experience. It's all a matter of perspective.
Correct, correct.
And you mentioned Dr. Storch. Love that guy's podcast. I'm a big fan of the Do or Do Not podcast. Anybody listening, I suggest you check that show out. Um, and you said you came from Florida to Tennessee. You just mentioned that, and a question popped into my mind. What was it like transitioning from Florida to Tennessee? I mean, that had to have been an adjustment.
Yeah, Fort Lauderdale, very multicultural, very warm. Beaches. you know, a big urban area. And Tennessee, man, it was East Tennessee, small town in Harrogate. I lived 5 minutes away in Cumberland Gap, very historic place, Cumberland Gap. It's where Daniel Boone and all the, I guess you would call them explorers came through to settle the Kentucky, Ohio Valley. So there's a lot of rich history there, but it's small. I mean, Cumberland Gap, 5 minutes away, maybe 600 people, and half of them were from my medical school. It's a few blocks by a few blocks. Harrogate's maybe a few square miles. If you want to go shopping, you had to go about 5 minutes over into Kentucky. We're right on the border with Kentucky. There was a Walmart there. Middlesboro's a small city of 10,000 people in the
Yeah.
old coal town, Appalachia. So poverty there. You get that. I got the full experience, and I loved it. I wouldn't have changed anything because you go and you thrive there, and that's what happened with me at Lincoln Memorial. We have a medical school in my backyard, Nova, right there in Fort Lauderdale. I grew up less than 10 minutes from there, but Lincoln Memorial is where I succeeded, and I loved it. Completely different though from where I'm from, and cherished years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Bloom where you're planted.
Correct, correct. And I was actually going there, you're a little like, oh gosh, I'm going to these mountains, this little sleepy town, nothing to do. And there was nothing to do, but we would hike. There was like two, three restaurants in the area, and we had a great time because, like I said, we formed our social circle, our community, and it made med school honestly those years bearable and
Yeah.
actually fun. Actually fun.
And it's probably nice having that family unit to support, right?
Yeah, the wife was there, the kids were there to yell and scream, so I had a good time.
How did you meet your wife?
Through high school, we had mutual friends. My buddy, was the cousin of her. One of my best friends was the cousin of her best friend, and introduced us. That's how we did in the old times, through friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Before all the phones emerged and before everything just became 10 times more complex. But you just
Simpler
bloom
than
where
that.
you're planted.
And I recommend, like I said again, get outside your comfort zone. Just like when you go to med school, join clubs that you wouldn't have joined. And I got outside of my comfort zone living in Tennessee in a small town. And they see that when you go to match, they see that you're from Fort Lauderdale, but you went to school in this small town. So you're a well-rounded candidate now. You can talk with rural programs because you're from a rural school. You can talk to big urban programs because that's where you grew up. And people like that. They like
Yeah,
that. Like you're
absolutely.
you're from what, Arizona, now you're going to be in Michigan, so that shows that you can survive different climates.
Yeah.
Because they worry about that. You interview, they're like, well, this is a New York program. We see you're a Florida guy. You can be like, I climbed through the snow in Michigan. This is nothing.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, I've yet to buy any winter clothing yet, but I'm starting to feel that impetus to get out and get something because it's starting to get cold real fast here.
The thing I learned, my wife is originally from like Rhode Island area, moved down to Florida like in middle school. So she told me you got to layer up. I wore long johns because East Tennessee, we'd get down to like the teens and the 20s, and we would get maybe like 18, 20 inches of snow, which is 20 inches more than I've ever seen. So, layer, man, long johns, pants, few layers on top, and you're all right. You can survive.
Yeah, my speaking of long johns, one of my buddies just graduated college in Kansas. He went to K-State and he had all these garbage bags full of clothes he was getting rid of, and he pulls out a pair of long johns that have the Budweiser logo all over them. And I'm like, you know what, dude? Even though these look absolutely ridiculous, no one's gonna see them under my pants, and I'm gonna need these in Michigan. So there we go.
Correct. Correct.
Oh, that's funny. So, all right. You're now in that first year of psychiatry residency. You're about 4 months in. I mean, how have things been since the transition? How have you adjusted and what has it been like? How are you liking it?
Well, I got, Baycare is a great program. I'm the third class in, so it's a relatively newer program. But Dr. Levine, he's our program director. He's a old school psychiatrist, good guy. He's a DO as well. And he takes care of us. He's like, this is a learning opportunity. He cares about our mental health, doesn't want us burning out. We have great facilities here. So I did 2 months of psych. my first two rotations were psychiatry. Then we have to do like 4 months of medicine. So I did ER and now I'm finishing up family med. So I've kind of been away from, you're never away from psych, but I was away from our behavioral hospital, our psych hospital. I'm loving it. Every day I wake up and I'm so glad I picked my program and my specialty. There's nothing wrong with ER, family med, and everything else. They're great, but and I'm gonna be, and this is just the beginning, and I'm still smiling because they say intern year is one of the toughest years, and I'm still smiling. I'm enjoying. It's tough. The hours can be long, but you're doing what you love. So,
It's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful
oh,
thing.
it
And
is.
it's a testament to what's possible with a good attitude.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because you got to think a lot of people would love to be in our position, your position entering it, my position in residency. So you got to put it into that perspective. Like it may be tough, you're showing up at 6:30, right, first shift or 6 in the morning, and your whole neighborhood's not even woken up yet, and you're in your car driving, drinking your coffee, and you're like, you know what? A lot of people would love to be in this position. I need to put a smile on. Because a
That's
lot of people that
awesome.
don't feel matched, right? Or they don't match in the specialty they want. And that happens. That happens. A lot of people, psych's getting competitive now. And I know several people with great grades, good board scores, didn't get psych, had to soak into something else.
It happens. And even
It does.
still,
It does.
I mean, that's a great point. It's a couple things I want to kind of reiterate that you've talked about so far is just going into medical school with the mentality that you're going to enjoy it, with gratitude, being social, being just honestly happy to be there,
Correct.
considering how well, how good you have it in life, how much worse it could be, and just enjoying the hardship, the challenge, the struggle, because it's like those are the most meaningful years. Those are the most meaningful experiences in life. I mean, I think I found even in my short experience getting through college, it's like the things that mean the most to me now, looking back, are the things that were just the most excruciatingly difficult or boring or just mundane that led to a particular achievement, right? It's the things that are tough that are the most meaningful. So medical school, go in with that attitude, meet some people, go have some of that hummus and pita at the get together on Friday after the test, man, and
Yeah.
it's really that simple. So now what do you like the most about psychiatry? We kind of talked about like when you're coming into your shifts and whatnot, and you're kind of just starting, but like the field as a whole, what is it that you think is most appealing?
So, so I was in the unit. So in inpatient psychiatry, is something newer for me, right? Because when I was a nurse practitioner, I would do psychiatry on the family nurse practitioner side, right? You would see them in the outpatient, but the inpatient, wow, seeing someone coming in crisis where the whole world is falling apart for them, right? And they're Baker acted, which in Florida, is the involuntary hold, and life for them is just in shambles. And you meet them, you bring them onto the unit, you do your admission, and you just talk to them. And you just having that one-on-one time and telling them then that I'm here to help you. We're gonna do the best we can. And being there for somebody in their worst moment. They're here. A lot of them, some are there voluntarily, but a lot of them are here involuntary, and they can't care for themselves, right? They don't have capacity, and you're just there. And then 3, 4, 5 days, a week, sometimes takes a few weeks later, they're leaving that door and they're not in crisis anymore, and they're smiling and they're going to get back out there, and you just change their whole trajectory of life, right? That's the amazing part of psychiatry. When everyone writes them off, or someone comes in with addiction, living on the streets, you get them clean and sober. You have your case manager there. You find them housing, and it's just a beautiful thing. It's a
It
beautiful
is.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, the impact that you can have is just
Amazing,
immense.
amazing. Correct, correct. And with behavior, with psychiatric medicine now, and just ever since COVID, especially, right?
Yeah.
They're respecting it more. It's kind of it's at the forefront now of medicine. It's not hidden. It's not You don't have to be ashamed of it, as a patient. So this is just the beginning, I feel, for psychiatric medicine. So I'm really excited to be a part of this and to make the changes we do.
Awesome. So, a couple things I want to ask you before we wrap up here. What lies ahead for you now? I mean, what are your visions for the next 5 years once you're done with residency? Where do you see yourself next? Although obviously it may be hard to say for you, but where do you think you might be in about 5 years?
5 years, I'll have a few teenagers because my two oldest are about to be 10 and 9, so I'll have two teenagers. So this hairline maybe I don't know if it'll even be there anymore. Yeah, yeah. But man, I've always been like I said, I've always volunteered or worked at fairly qualified health centers. So I know, and with my scholarship, I know I'm going to be doing something for the underserved. I would like the dream I would like to do would be like inpatient and outpatient
Hmm.
and having some kind of like nonprofit, something because a lot, unfortunately, finding a psychiatrist when you're on Medicaid, Medicare, or uninsured is tough. So I would love to start an organization or a practice that would help these people, the underserved and uninsured, and also doing some inpatient work. Just continue blossoming as a physician.
Awesome. Nice. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like a pretty solid plan. So the last question I would like to ask you, the theme that I've sort of created this show around is like the overarching goal, the reason I created this podcast is because I want to engage the curious mind and provide some information that might help them optimize their journey of lifelong learning and self-improvement. And that's in medicine and beyond. So the final question I'd like to ask you is if you have any last piece of advice that you think would be particularly valuable for the listeners, and that can relate to careers in medicine or just life in general. Anything you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Kind of like my life motto is don't be scared, just do it. Just do it. If you have a dream, don't let anything hold you back. Do it. So if you're listening to this great podcast, you're thinking about medical school, you think you may be a little too old, I'm in my 30s or 40s or whatever you're in. That's your dream, you do it. Don't be scared. You get one life. Just go for it. Better to have tried and have failed than have never tried, right? You miss all those shots you don't take. So I'm a big believer in that. Just do it. Get out there. Don't be scared. And if it and that's and the funny thing is you go in there, you do it, you're probably gonna succeed with that attitude. And if
Right?
you don't, at least you tried and you can go home at night, rest your head and go, you know what, I gave it my best. Don't have any regrets in life.
Awesome advice. Awesome advice. Never give up, just do it,
Do
man.
it.
And it's better to have tried and failed than to have never tried at all. Folks, we've been talking with Dr. Alex Sher, DO, psychiatry resident and columnist for the DO. It's been awesome talking with you, Dr. Sher. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.